Greetings, Legionnaires! Today we're going to do something a little bit different than the formal reviews everybody's used to, because guess what? It's been a crazy review season, and yep, that's just basically the gist of it. But I want to try something else out here that's a review along with kind of a discussion about all the components of this because, well, it's a pretty big game. Because today we're talking about So Dragon Quest XI is a game that requires a huge time commitment. I played through it and kind of did the critical path, which usually means that you're just kind of sticking to the story quests for the most part. I did some side stuff here and there, but for the majority of the game, it was pretty much just the straight and narrow, which is totally fine. But it was about 60 hours, a little under 60 hours for my playthrough, and that was just going pell-mell for the most part. That doesn't mean I didn't take a few moments to stop and smell the roses, but that's just how the game goes. So it's a lot, so just know that going in. You're not just going to be like hopping in there, and it's not going to be, oh, it's just like an easy breezy little game. You just kind of, play whenever you want. If you want to get through this game, it's like, kind of like a Persona, one of those games. It's a true JRPG, or Japanese role-playing game. Like, you really need to invest in it a lot. There's a lot of components to this game, but when it comes to Dragon Quest, there's a few that kind of speak to me immediately. Now, there's two in the very beginning that I always think about. It's the visuals and the music. I'm happy to say that the visuals are really the best they've ever been. These characters look and just kind of pop off the screen. That Akira Toriyama art style is so beautiful, and just looking at all of these little monsters roaming around the environments is truly a sight to behold, and I really enjoy it because it's so much better than random battles like they've had in the past. Kind of like what Pokemon Let's Go has been doing too, so we're probably going to see more and more of that, honestly. But besides that, all the characters, they all just look so cool. Even, like, the little side characters that have nothing to do with anything else. Like, they all have a lot of personality, a lot of wit to them, a lot of charm. And that's just in the looks. Now, we also have an interesting thing in that, like, the landscapes are kind of semi-photorealistic, almost. It's kind of weird. It's a little jarring. So basically, if you look at the characters and they look kind of cartoony, like, a mountainside will look like it's actually made of rock. Which is okay. It's a little weird. I kind of wish they would have just kind of made it all kind of cartoony, but the landscapes do look beautiful, so it's kind of a horse apiece, if you will. So yeah, I would say, though, the visuals are still stunning, and the animations of the characters, especially the monsters, are so freaking good. Like, everything that the monsters do, if you knock them out, you put them to sleep, you paralyze them, all that stuff looks super duper good. And all the animations for the attacks and stuff, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Another thing we want to talk about here is the music. Now, unfortunately, that's where it gets a little weird. Now, typically in the past, Dragon Quest has had kind of a mix, a lot of it way back in the day, couldn't be a full symphony orchestra. But then in Dragon Quest VIII, it did have a full symphony orchestra to actually play the score of the song. Now, you still get that theme music, like that, the one that we've been playing. That one is still, like, the classic. Like, they actually have the Tokyo Symphony Orchestra playing that, which is phenomenal. But the rest of the music in the game is MIDI, and that basically means it's kind of like an old-school, more computerized version of this music. Apparently, some people really like that, some people really don't. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, and while it's not always the most noticeable, if you think about it for half a second, you can tell that there's something wrong, or it just doesn't feel the same way. This is supposed to be like an old-school RPG franchise, which totally is, but in this current state of gaming, it feels weird to have these beautiful graphics and this huge open world, and then just have it be this old-school retro music. It just would feel better on like a 16-bit game. That's all I'm trying to say. So the music, while I love it so much, and there's so many tracks that I just adore, like especially the ones that they carried over from previous games, it just doesn't sound as good as it could possibly be, which is unfortunate.
I had thought to search the town for you while the citizenry were occupied with this idiotic spectacle. But no. Instead, you choose to saunter up and greet me in broad daylight. Brazen fools. Damn it. It is. It's him.
Alright, so now we get into the story, which is your pretty typical, light versus darkness here, which I just want to say, I didn't mention that before, but there will be plot elements we're talking about here today that might be considered spoilers, so if you haven't finished the game and you're really sensitive to that sort of thing, we're going to talk about that because this is a review and discussion, so just be prepared. You might want to, hold off on this if you haven't beaten the game yet. And I'm just talking again about the critical path of the game, not a bunch of the old secret stuff off to the sides for the most part. So the story, you play as mute protagonist, male character who is the luminary, the kind of the embodiment of light who is born to defeat darkness. So pretty much as standard as you can get. That's kind of one of the biggest drawbacks of the Dragon Quest franchise, in my eyes, is that it rarely takes chances with its story. Now, in the beginning of this, there's actually some interesting things they do where they play with time just a little bit, because they call it Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age. So there's some time manipulation, but that's kind of quickly hurried away, and they don't really do much with it. But they do have a few moments that are slightly heart-wrenching, and I appreciate that. But that's more so with the characters and what ends up kind of happening with the twists and turns for each of them, because each character kind of has a twist. But like I said, we'll get into that soon. But, pretty straight up kind of regular old story. It's like you are the source of light and you have to save the world from this true darkness that has arisen. And one thing I do appreciate about the game is that they do have this moment, and other games have this too, but it looks like you've lost, which I really appreciate, because in some of these, big RPGs, you never get that moment where you completely fail. Like the whole world has kind of gone to hell and you're like, oh no, but this game has that moment. And I really appreciate that because I like to see what happens after that. And it seems like in this case, they came back, they made it work, and, obviously they do, but it's just kind of cool to see that and to see what prices had to be paid in order to do that. And that's one of the biggest things, in this game is that there is actually a turning point. There's a moment here in the game that I really appreciated, even though it breaks my heart to talk about it because one of my favorite characters, Veronica, she's this really powerful mage that is actually an 18-year-old, even though she looks like a child, but she had a lot of her magic sapped and she basically reverted to a child form. So she looks like a kid, doesn't talk like a kid, has the powers of a true mage, she's very strong. But she ends up giving up her life during a crucial moment. Yggdrasil, the world tree, is being attacked. All the heroes are about to die because Mordegon, this true darkness, this demon, has come and he is going to kill everybody and everything. And in a last-ditch effort, Veronica uses all of her magic to basically shield everybody and spread them out across the world. And it's like, oh my gosh, you saved him. Well done. Well done. So that moment I really appreciated because not too many games are willing to take that kind of a risk where they're saying, hey, here's a main character you love and you've leveled up for hours and hours and hours. They're dead. They're gone now. That part was like, oh my gosh to me. I was like, no way, she's got to be coming back, right? Does not come back. Does not come back. Crazy. So that was something I did appreciate, even though the story for the main part is pretty straightforward. Let's get into it, though, with the characters. So you have your main hero, like I said, very boring, very kind of straightforward. It really bothers me because I feel very strange in knowing that they hired a voice actor to come in and basically do just the sighs or just kind of the exasperated feeling, and you can hear all these kind of uhs and uhs, but they didn't actually give him lines. So you have this protagonist that mostly just nods to people and does explain things to them, but while he explains these things, he just kind of does this, and people understand him. Obviously, we're supposed to be the hero, but there's basically no customization besides changing out certain skins and stuff like that, where you can actually manipulate how you look. So it's like we are that character, but they predetermined who we were going to be. And this has been a problem in JRPGs for such a long time now, and it really bothers me. And Dragon Quest, you do not get a pass. You need to be better about this. It's really stupid. I can't stand it. Everyone's gonna follow this guy to their death, and he doesn't say a word apparently. It really bothers me because it's a character-driven world, and story, and yet we have a main protagonist who we're supposed to be, but like everyone just loves us inexplicably. I don't think it's fair anymore. I know it's tough. I know it's difficult to actually kind of dive in and say, hey, you know what? We are going to give this main character a personality. Not everyone's going to like it, but some people will love it. Some people might even hate it. Just do that next time, please. Please, I beg you. You make great characters, Square. You guys can do this. So I believe in you. But then let's get to your first companion, your classic, first, your best bud. He's a rogue. His name is Eric. Eric, I used a lot for my damage early on. I like him. He's kind of a Han Solo type of character. So, you kind of know what to get in. What you're getting in for with Eric. It's nothing super crazy. He uses knives. You can use swords. You can use some other like boomerangs and things with him. But for the most part, his character is very much like, let's, try to make as much money as we possibly can. But I had a vision once that I should help the Luminary, or the Seer came to him. The Seer came to him and said, hey, you got to help the Luminary. So that's what he does. Because he was directed by the Seer to help the Luminary, that is his life now. So, yeah. There you go. Not too much to Eric. The one big twist with his character is that he actually was a Viking, kind of, sort of, back in the day. He and his sister were taken by Vikings and raised by them. And his sister, inadvertently, as a gift to her from Eric, got this pendant, and she could turn anything to gold. And she ends up using it too much and becoming gold herself, or becomes gold herself. And then Morrigan frees her, and then she ends up joining the Spectral Sentinels, the kind of the last big group of bosses that you end up taking down over the course of the game, which is another thing about the game. Every time you collect all these orbs, and then after you do that, you got to go collect everybody else because you got spread around. So you kind of replay the game, not to the same extent of like Devil May Cry 4, where it's basically the first part of the game flipped over onto itself, but you kind of go back to these places, these big cities, multiple times. But that's not so bad. I don't mind seeing the changes that have happened and how you've affected it, and it's kind of fun to go back. So it's not as big of a deal, but the ending of this story is basically stretched out way long, because it's like you find out everybody's little backstory then. You don't really find it out in the early stages, you find it out at that point. So that's Eric. Next up on the list, Veronica and Serena. We touched on them earlier. Veronica and Serena are the reincarnation of the one of the heroes that helped out the previous Luminary, and I think her name was, oh my gosh, what was it? Serenica. And basically, they were both like they're reborn, but in two parts. So there you have Veronica and Serena. Serenica, yeah, kind of a stretch. As I said before, I love Veronica. I think she's great. She's spunky. Love her look. Oh my gosh, her look is so good. And I just love the power she packs in such a small little frame. It's great. It's so good. Serena, kind of a wet blanket. She's just kind of like your healer. Not too much to her. They try to spice her up later on after Veronica dies, and she ends up inheriting all of her magical powers because they want to say like, hey, if you still want to use her as a mage, don't freak out about it. We've got it. So like, it's fine, but it's not the same. She even cuts her hair at one point and was like, I just don't care. But Serena, she gets a little better after Veronica passes, but it's still Veronica's show. Without Veronica, yeah, let's just say if Serena would have gone and passed away, I would have been like, But like when Veronica went, I was like, no! Like that really stabbed me. That was a painful part. So the big twist for them, like I said, kind of just knowing that they are the descendant of the Luminaries, like, one of the heroes that helped the Luminary back in the day, because the previous Luminary had a host of friends that helped him as well defeat the darkness, so as you can see. But the big twist with them is that Veronica actually dies, saving everybody, and goes away. So, like I said, maybe these aren't considered twists, but they kind of seem like that to me, because usually when a character joins your party, they don't really change too much, and that was kind of a big change because they were a package deal. They're twin sisters. They're both 18, and one of them dies. And there's a moment earlier on where Serena asks Veronica, well, if we were both born at the same time, we must both have bloomed a leaf on Yggdrasil, because everybody who's alive is a leaf on the world tree. And she said, do you think that, maybe we'll die at the same time? Like both those leaves will fall at the same time? And Veronica kind of like brushes it off, and she's like, you're always kind of slow. So I figured, basically saying that she was going to die first, Veronica was. And then she kind of turns over on her side because they're going to sleep. And she says like, but, that's a good thought. And then she says to her in this moment, after they flash back to this again, they show more of it, and Veronica says, promise me, Serena, that you will continue this regardless. If I die, you'll still go on. And Serena's like, I don't want to even entertain that thought. And Veronica's like, please do. Please think about this. And it's like Veronica knew. And it's like, no, Veronica. Yeah, that sucks. Oh my gosh, it sucks. Okay, anyway, we're moving on. Sylvando. Sylvando is an interesting case for me. While I agree with, like, his motivation, basically he is this guy who was supposed to be a knight because his dad was a world-renowned knight, and he was going to follow in his father's footsteps. There we go. And he was going to be that guy too, but he decided, you know what, one day the circus showed up in town, and he wanted to join the circus. So he wants to just kind of put a smile on everybody's face. He wants to entertain the world. And personally, I totally get it, man. I'm right there with you. I want to give the world something to smile and forget for a while about. I don't know. But Sylvando's very flashy, very flamboyant. Yeah, not for me personally. And that's just like, I don't like those flex characters in that, as far as a kit goes, Sylvando is one of those guys where it's like, well, he can use a sword and shield, or he could use knives, or he could use a whip. There isn't something really specific to Sylvando. He kind of feels like a little bit like Angelo from Dragon Quest VIII, for those familiar, even though Sylvando didn't have a bow. I wanted Sylvando to have something really specific to him, and as far as weapons go, there wasn't really something that really stood out to me as being like, that's the Sylvando thing. So I gave him a whip, and I didn't really use him very much, to be honest with you. So while I'm sure a lot of people out there love Sylvando, and they love that he, after the World Tree fell, he basically got a group of guys together, and they were just kind of dancing and singing their way around the world, trying to make everybody feel better. I thought he was just kind of like the big comic relief character. That's the way he's supposed to be. He has a little bit of heart. He cares about everyone in the group. But beyond that, he just kind of falls flat. And you have this moment where you take him back to meet his father again after he left, joined the circus years and years ago. And his father basically accepts him again and says, like, don't come back here until you do what you said you were going to do and make the world smile. So, and of course, Sylvando leaves with you again to help everybody out, and this is kind of in the latter half of the game, and the young gentlemen that have been following Sylvando are hanging out with his dad now and trying to make his dad all happy and cheery. So there you go. Fun stuff. So yeah, that's Sylvando. Then we get to some of my favorite characters in the whole game, Rab and Jade. Now, when you run into Rab and Jade, you run into them in a fighting arena. You actually go through like a tournament, and Rab and Jade it's a pair against you and Eric. And Jade, who shows up first, she's fighting Eric, and basically you get to see her fight without any weapons, just her feet, just kicking it with her boots against Eric, who's using knives. And it's such a cool scene. Like, watching her fight like that was just like, and I'm sold. Like, I was like, you will be a party member forever. Even though I kind of mained spears with her because I love spears in games. And she was clutch later on in the game. She was just a damage dealer for me. And I really appreciated that. I really like Jade. I like her character. She is actually the daughter of King Carnelian, who is the king of a neighboring country to our hero, basically. Our hero is from Dundrasil, and actually the king is from Heliodor. So she kind of views our, hero or the protagonist, the luminary, as sort of little brother. So they kind of have that relationship, even though technically they aren't related. But Jade's pretty cool, so she is basically this really cool kick-ass princess who is just not taking any crap from anybody and likes to mess with people from time to time. But she's a little more stoic, so I really appreciate her. So basically, she's fighting both of you, and Rab's just kind of sitting off to the side. Now, Rab, I freaking love you, Rab. I love Rab because not only is he a cool old guy in an RPG, which is usually full of youngsters. I love having just like the old timer who is incredibly powerful. And first off, I started specializing him with claws, because in the game you can kind of specialize every character multiple different ways on this kind of crazy skill tree thing. And by, unlocking different slots, you can gain access to other things, or maybe unlock more of these kind of perk points to use to kind of flesh yourself out more. I started with the claws just for damage because I was like, okay, he's an old man with like almost Wolverine claws. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. But then eventually, at the end of the game, he became my healer, and I just gave him like a heavy wand, and he was healing everybody, and he does a pretty great job of that too. He's excellent at that. He's excellent at everything he does, because I love you, Rab. But Rab is actually even cooler than that. He might have the coolest connection in the story to anybody, to our Luminary, because he is actually the previous king of Dundrasil, the grandfather of the Luminary. And it's so cool because, like, how many freaking RPGs do you get to quest with your grandpa? Like, that's so cool to me. And he has this quest for revenge because not only does he want to save you and save the world, he wants to avenge his daughter and son-in-law who were killed the night you were born. Like, the Luminary was born, gets, like, immediately brought in front of these other kings to be like, hey, this is the Luminary, we're going to need to use him because he's got this mark that says he's going to destroy evil. And that night, a whole bunch of demons come in, they like kill everybody, and you barely get away. It's kind of a whole Moses thing. He puts the baby like in a basket, the mom does, and goes down the river, whatnot. Raised by other people, you know. But just Rab is so cool. Rab is so cool. Rab has gone through a whole bunch of different things, like not only being a king or being a warrior, he trained like with these monks. So he has like this whole backstory, and he is basically like the guy who knows everything, knows everybody. And I just absolutely love him for that, because not too many characters exist in this world that are just like him. And once people find out that this little old man with this little hat happens to be the king of Dundrasil, or the previous king of Dundrasil, people are like, oh my god, it's Rab, what, Lord Robert, you're alive. Like, that is so cool to me. Also, he uses dark magic, which I absolutely love, and he says, let the darkness consume you, which I absolutely adore. So yeah, I love Rab. Rab's great. And finally, last but certainly not least, someone coming in from out of nowhere, because he was nowhere to be seen as far as on your party. This might be the biggest spoiler of the whole thing, so if you've gotten to this point and you're like, oh no, there hasn't been anything spoiled, this could be it. This character not only brings something fresh to the party, but brings a heck of a lot of power too. I'm talking about Hendrik. Yes, like this Dark Knight from Heliodor who's been like chasing you down the whole time, because the whole world, like King Carnelian, has kind of convinced them. He's convinced everyone that you, the Luminary, are considered the Darkspawn, and you are the only reason that Mortigan, the darkness, has returned. Unfortunately, King Carnelian gets possessed by Mortigan way long ago, so that's the reason he kind of sets the whole world upon you. But Hendrik and Jasper are these two knights that are coming after you. Jasper ends up kind of teaming up with Mortigan and trying to get demonic powers to surpass Hendrik, because they've had that kind of classic anime rivalry where it's like, I will surpass you, no, I shall surpass you. But Hendrik eventually becomes like the savior of the world for a little bit. He's the hero of Heliodor, because once Yggdrasil falls, he kind of helps put together this thing called the Last Bastion, and back at like your hometown, and he's defending as many people as he possibly can, because he has always tried to be a chivalrous knight that has taken orders from the king. So basically what happens in that moment when Yggdrasil falls, the King Carnelian shows up with Hendrik and Jasper, and basically King Carnelian shoots Hendrik in the back. It's like, whoa, what's happened? And then Mortigan comes out of King Carnelian's body, and then King Carnelian's fine, and then he's back to his normal self. Basically, Hendrik was following the orders of his king, because that's what he was told to do, and he's a knight that lives by that word. But after that, you end up helping him out a bit, and then he joins you as maybe your most faithful companion. He says he's the Luminary's sword, the shield, and an unswerving companion, and I love him so much. Not only that, his kit is great, because you can get a shield and an axe, and that is something you don't see in most of these games. And Parallax, oh baby, big two-handed swing with the axe that can sometimes paralyze. So good, great damage. Guy can heal your team, guy can put kabuff on everybody, so, you know, ups their defense against just like straight attacks, which very useful at the end of the game. So I love Hendrik, and he's great. Also, he kind of has a little bit, it seems like, of a crusher thing with Jade, because he's like the protector of Heliodor, and she was in his charge for a time, so there's this kind of like funny moments where Jade will kind of like make a joking move on him, and he's like, I'm sorry, princess, you know, and he's very just straightforward. He can't, like, he doesn't joke around very much, but he really cares about everybody. He's a very staunch protector. And you guys know that anime trope. He is that guy. And I absolutely love him. Hendrik is so good. His outfit's a little weird. I will say that later on because he ditches the whole dark armor. And he gets like this kind of like old school patchwork knight kind of thing or kind of quilt looking thing. But yeah, I love Hendrik. Hendrik's great. So as far as the companions go, that is everybody for the main ones. For me, I would probably put it, let's see. I'd go Hendrik, Rab, maybe Veronica Jade, Eric, Serena, Sylvando. That's for if I had to kind of, make a quick level system for there. Just got to say my favorites, best to worst. But let's talk about the combat for a second. So it's 4-person combat, kind of your classical style. You can do it in 2 forms. You can either have the classical camera setup where it's just everybody standing in a line, attacking whatever monsters you're going to face. But then there's also more of a free roam, free battle mode where you can move the camera around, move the characters around. Now, you'd think that give you some sort of kind of advantage. Well, guess what? It doesn't. You can do that, but like if they use a area attack, it's going to still hit everybody. So there's really no reason to do it unless you kind of want to move the camera, move the characters, or have something to do during battle. Which is just kind of like, okay, that's great that you put that in there. It seems like a wasted thing, but whatever. I'm glad that you did it. I didn't use it. I kept it the classical mode, made it faster, made it go pretty quickly. And I usually put all of my characters on follow orders because you can just have them choose wisely or make decisions whatever they think is best. I like to be in control of that because I don't like to let my party members just be like, oh yeah, I've got an idea. It's like, no, like, and that is a recipe for disaster. But yeah, pretty classic, fighting style. There's nothing really super flashy to it except for the pep powers. The pep powers basically allow you to do things you wouldn't normally do. So each character has the chance of being pepped up at any time. You basically entered a heightened state. You can do this when you're like low on health. Just sometimes when you start a turn, you get pepped up, whatever. Your attack and all of your abilities, for the most part, whatever you're kind of specialized in, go up. So for the next 3 or 4 turns, you basically do more damage and you're a little more resistant to things. However, you can expend those pep things, their pep points or pep powers, if you have someone else that's pepped up, potentially, or if the luminary is there, because weirdly enough, you don't have to have them on your team all the time, which I thought was kind of cool, so you don't have to have the hero on the team. You can switch them out. But basically what you can do is combine your abilities. So, for instance, one of the lesser ones is called Scorch and Sweep. You can basically use fire as the luminary. He puts it out, and then Jade kind of kicks it with her leg, which is really cool. It burns like a whole team, and then it also knocks them down of monsters. So it's like, that can be pretty nice. Most of these status ailments don't necessarily work super well on bosses, but once in a while they do, and it ends up like paralyzing them for a turn or a few turns or knocking them down or something like that. It's just so good. You're like, oh, that was good use. Once in a while, though, you get multiple people pepped up. So if 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, then you get the ultimate pep power things. Like you get these great little cutscenes. So if you've played any RPG before, summons. It's basically like that, but even better. Because basically what happens is that they go into this crazy cutscene, which you can skip. I recommend you don't though, because they're always amazing. They're insane. One of my favorites is Wacky Sack. Basically, Jade and Rab take a dark ball of energy and play hacky sack with it, and then Jade kicks it into his mouth. Rab eats this thing, and then Godzilla beams it out and does a bunch of damage. Hilarious. And there's a ton of them like this. Some of them are more serious, between Rab and the Luminary. They do this crazy one called Solar Flare. It's like a big, gigantic, magical sword with a bunch of blue energy around it. Blows everything up. So they've got everything. They got you covered. So those abilities are really cool. And basically it means, you can burn off your pep, early to do, a crazy attack. Or if you want to wait, if you can kind of time it right so they don't, lose their power, you can wait and get a few rounds in of extra damage and then use your pep powers. So it's a nice little wrinkle on a tried and true system. Nothing super crazy. So the kind of psych up is gone, but is replaced with pep. That's kind of the big thing as far as attacking, or combat goes. And the combat's pretty quick. One nice thing is running around the open world, run up to a group or an enemy. You can kind of tag a few with your crossbow and then try to get them all grouped together, and then you can attack them beforehand so you can do some damage before you even get in a fight. So that's really nice. But because you can dash around, you can avoid a lot of these fights, especially at the end of the game. There was a few times where I had like this big like dragon or these knights in front of me, and I would just kind of like run around them. Like, it's so funny. They're just like, hey, like you're not supposed to, but I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna run around you. So dashing, using your horse, which is great. They give that to you really early on, so you can gallop and knock kind of lesser leveled enemies out of your way. Nice to traverse the world really quickly right from the get-go. And then also the ability to knock out special monsters that are kind of sparkling on a map, and you can use them as mounts. So they've got like these exoskeletons where you kill them in a fight or whatever, and you get their little suit, and then you can jump up onto higher ledges. Or you might take out a dragon rider, and then you can use the dragon to fly. So there's little things like that in there, which are nice. However, mechanically, like, that's as far as it goes. And in a game like this big, especially, it came out in 2017, here in 2018, though, it seems a little lackluster. There's like that, but then there's like some ropes you can maybe climb, but only in specific areas. So they have these big open areas, but there's invisible walls everywhere. So if you are really hoping for more of like a free roam experience, they have areas, but on your map, that's pretty much all you're going to get. Which, side note, when you bring up your map, it's cool because when you turn, it only like eats up half the screen, so you can like see where you're looking on your map, like your little arrow moves. So if you want to turn, be like, oh, where's my guy looking? Oh, okay, cool. It's really nice. But mechanically, it could be better. That's all I'm trying to say. It seems a little too archaic in that, and it should really, by this point, be a little more advanced. It's a little depressing. It just seems like it could be a lot more than that. Yeah. So pretty much there you go. That's what the game has to offer you. Pros, obviously, the look, the visuals for me, and that might be a personal thing for you. If you like how this game looks, maybe you don't. If you don't like that Toriyama art style, the Dragon Ball Z art style, you probably won't like this. I personally love it. I think it has a charm and a timeless nature to it, even though I wish that kind of would have been applied to most of the landscapes as well. The characters, everybody except the Luminary, for the most part, I love. Even if I have some qualms with some of them, even Sylvando, I'm going to take over the Luminary because Sylvando has a personality. So I love him. I love just like being in this world. I love the monster designs. I think the older ones hold up a lot better. Some of the newer ones, which were newer to me anyway, aren't as cool, or they're kind of weird. And it's like, that is terrifying. But the world is just so cute. There's lots of puns. There's lots of jokes. There's so many hidden things to find out. The side quests, they can be okay. They're just kind of time consumers. You mostly just get an item for that. It's not really for experience or anything, but they're there. So I don't want to put them necessarily in the pros or the cons, but the pros, combat's pretty fun. It's still entertaining after like 60 hours. You really have to be invested, especially in some of these boss fights where I did get knocked out a few times here and there. But thankfully, I figured it out and overcame the last boss on my first try. Yeah, first try. Nobody saw it, but just believe me. As far as the cons go, mechanically, could be better. It seems a little archaic in that. I think the music also, unfortunately, going for like an old school style. I don't think saying a game is a throwback or trying to be an homage or paying patronage to those old games is going to work too much longer because the cracks are starting to show much more. This is what Dragon Quest IX should have been, but Dragon Quest IX went a different direction in 10, and now they're back to 11. So this kind of feels like what Dragon Quest IX should be, but this is Dragon Quest 11. So maybe 12 will be different. But yeah, it's a good game. I will give you the score here in just a second, but I would recommend, if you're looking for a big RPG like this that's charming, that you can jump into and kind of digest slowly because it's like an anime basically that you're playing through here, and to take your time with it, go for it. If you're a big fan of like longer games and getting really invested or trying to in a world, this is a way to do it, even though they don't always give you the best options to do that because stories go pretty quickly. So if you try to get invested in a story, sometimes it's kind of there and gone. And one last huge con, having to press the X button for both text and spoken dialogue. Oh my gosh, you will be pressing the X button for days. There is no auto feature, some auto scroll thing, which they do have in Persona 5. I found that out way too late, but they do not have it here that I have found, and it was like, oh, he's pressing X the whole time. So there's a lot of you watching and a lot of you pressing X, which does get pretty tiresome. But yes, I could go on and on about this game, but basically, I'm giving this game an 8.5 out of 10. Again, really good core aspect of this game. It could have been a lot higher. At first, I was kind of thinking about a 9 or something, but really, some of these detrimental things, while they don't completely ruin the game, become very noticeable, 50, 60 hours into it. So it's like, okay, I'm still pressing X. I'm still hearing this not so great music. I'm kind of in this world, but it doesn't seem as fleshed out as it could be mechanically. Now, it's not fair to compare everything to like Breath of the Wild, but at the same time, give us a little more traversal options. Like, come on, please. So there you go, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this kind of review and discussion put on top of it. Like I said, I might be doing this for another game or two this year. We still do regular, just kind of 4 or 5 minute, 8 minute long reviews that are cut together, but it just isn't going to happen this year for this game because it's so big and there's so many other games to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed it, but please, please, please leave your comments. I want to know if you like this. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. If you give it a thumbs down, I understand, but please just tell me why. Like, that's really the best thing, because I need constructive criticism. That really helps. But if you want to hear more about this game, I did talk about it on our podcast, The Critical Podcast. You can find that weekly over on our YouTube channel, or here, as you are here. And if you want to support us, consider buying some merchandise over at our Spreadshirt. You have some really cool stuff over there, like shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, things like that. And if you really, really want to support us, besides liking this video, subscribing to the channel if you like a bunch of our videos, and if you're at the subscription point and you've been subscribed for a while and you're like, how else can I support them besides sharing them around? Check out our Patreon. That'd be huge. So that's patreon.com/criticalreviews. I hope you enjoyed this, everybody. Like I said, let me know what you think about it. Tweet at me. I'm at JimmyGood013. I want to hear from you, all right? Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thanks for letting me kind of just spill my guts about this game. Whew, feels good. It's like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. Anyway, thank you so much, and just remember to adapt and overcome.